Who's Terry?
Who's Terry? Oh my god! Wow, what a finale. And because of Holly's paranoia, amnesia, and obvious scratch, it looks like we're guaranteed a second season out of these characters and story. Let's start with those clues and cliffhangers associated with Holly, because I'm conflicted with how they went about it, and it's really the only aspect about the finale I didn't love. Who's Terry could mean literally anything. We have no clue how or if El Cuco could have infected her, but it's obviously supposed to be a clue that he did, or that she herself is some kind of outsider. She's got the cut and paranoia in the after credit scene to prove it. The line "Who's Terry" hit right in the middle of the climax, and I'm honestly trying to decide if it added to the tension and chaos or detracted from it. It was weird to have Holly say it right then and there, and because nothing concrete came of it, and there's no answers or clues as to why she said it, it's just a curveball in the middle of the climax that is more annoying than intriguing. I would have preferred that be taken out, and this first season story having a more close-ended feeling. And if you want to keep those after credit scenes to set up the next season, fine. Everything else about the finale though, perfection. Kenneth Hayes' apology to Glory hit me like a ton of bricks. The big shootout to start things off was intense and visceral as hell, and having a real conversation with El Cuco, instead of simply trying to kill it, was exactly what I wanted from the final confrontation. So the finale was pretty great, but what about the season overall? Well, first things first, the head developer and screenwriter for this was Richard Price. He's written for The Wire, The Deuce, The Night Of, all fantastic shows as far as I'm concerned. And he's managed to live up to his own high standard yet again with The Outsider. The man likes his these, apparently. There's very little here to find disappointing or uninspired. The washed out colors and slow but methodical direction created an atmosphere that was as enticing as it was desperate. There's some resemblance to Jason Bateman's work on Ozark here, and his direction for the first 2 episodes established a look and feel that was perfect for a Stephen King story. The writing, acting, and editing is all exactly what you'd expect and want out of a new flagship HBO series. Really, the only episode that somewhat disappointed me was episode 7, and that's partly because I was led to believe that there was going to be so much more from it. The show and HBO hyped up this car ride between Holly and Jack pretty hard. The teasers and lead-in was basically screaming, "This is going to be the most intense episode ever." And what I thought we were going to get was an incredibly intimate, claustrophobic, and enduring 50-minute battle of wills. Instead, Holly and Jack had a solid 6 minutes of conversation, with her escaping him halfway through the episode, and all that tension and anxiety was just wasted. Them being together should have lasted a majority of the episode. Her first attempt to get away should have failed. I wanted so much more dialogue between the two of them. Two people who are being forced into this terrible situation, and the only thing they can do is try to rationalize the horrible entity that's put them there. It could have been 20 to 30 minutes of conversation gold, and instead, it was just a teaser of what could have been. It doesn't help that the logic of this scenario didn't hold up throughout either. So Holly knew that Jack was being manipulated by El Cuco. Jack showed her the marks on his neck, and admitted it. So why would he continue to play coy about his true intentions before letting her use the bathroom? She knows he's going to do something bad with her. He should know that she's aware of that by this point. And yet, he's asking to use her phone, aka taking it from her, nonchalantly grabbing the keys when she gets out of the car, and letting her use the bathroom, as if he's still putting up a ruse, like they're simply investigating a crime scene. There is no way he should have let her use the bathroom or get out of the car at that point. When she got away 27 minutes into the episode, I couldn't help but feel like they wasted and ruined what should have been an amazing high point for the season. So the season wasn't perfect, and its conclusion left itself slightly more open-ended than I would have liked, but I'm still of the opinion that The Outsider can stand alongside the best Stephen King adaptations out there. It's yet another example why the medium of television is the best place to be telling these kinds of stories. 9 sketches of El Cuco out of 10. It's poetically fitting, I think, that we go from one of the best shows of 2020 so far to one of the biggest disappointments I had the displeasure of forcing myself through. For context of what I'm about to say, I enjoyed the first season of Altered Carbon. You could tell it had a fair amount of respect for its source material, and it at least attempted to craft a narrative that tackled its complex, philosophical themes of the self. It didn't always succeed, but it definitely tried, so I gave it a 6.5. Ortega and her mother, for example, were one of the highlights of Season 1. The moral and emotional struggle that comes with bringing someone back to life who didn't want to be was a perfect way to communicate one of the themes at the heart of this universe. So when I tell you that the second season of this show made the first look like a masterpiece of science fiction, that should communicate to you how hard I believe they dropped the ball. What the fuck happened here? This felt like the show was handed over to a group of producers and writers that hadn't even watched the first season or read the book. People who simply read the footnotes. It is so obvious to me that the main narrative of this season was lazily thrown together, with no understanding of what makes science fiction great. The only forethought on display here was how to fit in another lame or contrived fight scene. And Jesus Christ, the action wasn't even that good. The first episode of Season 1 had a better action sequence than anything in this season. When the Special Forces team first took down Kovac in that apartment complex, I'm sorry, but nothing else in all of these 2 seasons has come close to matching that. They made a big deal of all these sleeves this season having superhuman reflexes and abilities. And what did they do with it? They magnetized guns to their hands and did slow-mo flips from time to time. Cool. If you're going to say fuck it and only care about action, why the hell weren't these action scenes more creative and over the top? Every single one was mediocre at best. The Mortal Kombat movies had better fight choreography than this. These guys are in superhuman sleeves. The fights should be making my jaw drop with how bone-crushing, destructive, and fast-paced they are. And instead, you're giving me fights that I've seen 100 times before in any other TV show. Into the Badlands on AMC had better fight choreography than this. Warrior on Cinemax has better fights than this. Fuck, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on ABC had more interesting fight scenes than this. And none of them had Netflix money behind them. As I was saying, this season had no clue what it wanted to be. Bringing an elder into this misses the point of the entire show as far as I'm concerned. Showing us the aliens that created the technology is meaningless unless they fleshed it out from the beginning and incorporated more of their culture and history into the philosophical themes of self. But this just felt like a last-minute ass pull. This story is about what happens when our notions of being human become challenged and broken. What does bringing an elder back who wants to get revenge on humans mean in this story? Nothing. It means jack shit. You know what a good idea was? Double sleeving an earlier version of Kovac who hadn't fallen in love with Falconer yet, and having Kovac figuratively and literally struggle against 2 versions of himself. That's good science fiction because it challenges our perspective of the self, about the choices and circumstances that make up our lives, and about the very notion of free will and fate. But then they ruin that by turning Kovac Prime good. Why would you waste this conflict like that? You had it established perfectly. A struggle between the father figure of Jaeger and the love of his life, Falconer. 2 versions of the same man at odds because of different experiences that each gave them meaning and a fundamental understanding of who they were. But nah, fuck that. Have them all fist fight an alien at the end, so Loverboy Kovac can sacrifice himself. And be brought back by Poe at the last minute anyway. I despise whoever wrote this season. This had to have different writers. Alright, let's take a look. Oh my lord. Creator. Written by 1 episode. Interesting. Michael R. Perry. Oh, Into the Badlands. Writer. Nightmare Alley. 1 episode. Michael R. Perry, you get a pass. So it seems you wrote most of it. Allison Shapker. Executive producer. Well, Allison Shapker, You're on the list. Speaking of Poe, he was literally the only reason this show resembles the namesake. Poe was more real and human than anyone else in this dumpster fire, and anytime he was on screen, the show was immediately better for it.
It is the impractical things in this tumultuous hellscape of a world that matter most. A book, a name, chicken soup, they help us remember that even in our darkest hour, life is still to be savored.
Yeah, that's the Altered Carbon I know and love. I'm sorry, but this entire season felt cheaper, lazier, and dumber than its predecessor. Tell me cliche lines like this don't make you chuckle.
Jaeger, he's here. And wherever he goes, hell usually follows. He won't stop until he gets what he wants. The longer he has to hunt, the more dangerous he gets.
Or how about the fact that they just forgot sleeves were a commodity that weren't easily replaced? The first season made a huge deal about criminals and the lower class being spun back up into sleeves that weren't anything like their imagined selves. Trip's dad was a criminal who was asleep for however long, and he was brought back in a perfect recreation of his old, black, perfectly idealized dad's self. The first season would have focused on that for an entire episode, and maybe even made me care about Trip. But no, we don't need to explain any of that. Just give Trip magic blue lights in her head that allow her to do anything we need to keep the plot moving. Yeah, that's how you create interesting, sympathetic characters. Magic headlights. Fucking genius. I don't care how many kids and lesbian lovers she has. Magic blue lights in her head ruins it all. This wasn't Altered Carbon. This wasn't even science fiction. This was Mortal Kombat in space. I rest my case. 3 slow-mo flip kicks out of 10. You're on the list.